Today we're going to talk about British strategy throughout the period of the American Revolution. There really were three distinct phases of the Revolution, and British strategy changed as the war evolved. First in 1775, particularly in Lexington and Concord, but also in Virginia and in the Carolinas, it was really viewed as a local rebellion, and the British sought to stamp out the local rebellions. But by early 1776, it was very apparent that this was not a local rebellion, and that in fact the 13 colonies were united against King George. So at that point they needed a more comprehensive strategy. And the strategy that they came up with in 1776 was to take New York City as a base, and also to secure Canada as a base to the north. And they were going to secure those two bases, and then in 1777 start General Lord Howe's army from New York City up the Hudson River, and Sir Guy Carleton's army from Quebec City and Montreal south through Lake Champlain to meet at Albany. The point of this was to cut New England, which was considered to be the hotbed of the rebellion, off from the rest of the United Colonies and strangle them, basically cut off the head, and then the body will wither and die. However, there's a secondary objective to this. They want to strike what's the modern term is the center of gravity, the de facto patriot capital at Philadelphia. Now the problem is the British have no one commander-in-chief in North America. And so this gives General Howe the freedom in New York. When Burgoyne starts moving south from Lake Champlain, Howe, having no direct orders to help him, turns and attacks Philadelphia and succeeds in taking Philadelphia in 1777. Meanwhile, Burgoyne comes to grief at Saratoga and surrenders in October of 1777. The defeat at Saratoga changes the entire war, because now the French and the Spanish join on the side of the United Colonists. And this is important because it's no longer a one-front war for Britain. It's now a world war. You stand on the White Cliffs of Dover in 1777 and look across at Calais at French coast, you're looking at a neutral coast. In 1778, it's an enemy coast. And in 1778, there's an invasion scare. The Spanish and the French try to assemble an army and ships. They can't assemble it enough in time, but at the same time they want to invade England. There's a very real possibility that they were going to succeed. The other thing it does is the colonies, particularly in the Caribbean and in India and in other places around the world that are really the lifeblood of the British Empire and are frankly more important than North America, now become under threat from French and Spanish forces. So Britain, which in 1777 has 2/3 of its army in North America, by 1778 has only 1/3. And this is also why General Howe has to abandon, or now General Clinton has to abandon Philadelphia and retreat to New York. The British at this point, what can we do? What are the maximum gains that we can get in the colonies with the limited forces available? And what they choose is they look at this, what's called the Southern strategy. There's a lot of loyalists that are reported down in Georgia and the Carolinas, and so they decide to go and commit an army to try and liberate that area as best they can. And that precipitates the Savannah campaigns of 1777-78, Siege of Charleston in 1780, and the South Carolina operations in 1780 and 81, and then of course the road to Yorktown in October of 1781. After Yorktown, the British decide to cut their losses in North America and retreat basically to an enclave around Charleston and an enclave around New York City, and fight the rest of the war in the rest of the world. And finally, when the peace treaty is signed in 1783, the conflict ends. As a point of fact, the war, which first battles were at Lexington and Concord in Massachusetts in 1775, the last battle of this war is fought in India in 1783. So from British perspective, to really understand the British perspective, you have to understand that the way the war changes after Saratoga in 1777. We in the United States look at the war as one front, the only front. But for Britain, after 1777, this was merely one front and a less important front in a global conflict.